This is a really weird video, and it's based mostly on my own opinions. But today, I'm going to be ranking the 5 types of bullying, with number 1 as the most painful and number 5 as the least. As someone who has been bullied all her life, every year, since the first grade, let's just say I have a lot of experience on this topic. The bullying done to me is very multimodal. I've tried all of these mediums. With that, I want to say that just because I'm ranking them doesn't mean that the ones with lower ranks are not painful. They are all very, very painful. Bullying in any shape, way, or form is horrible, and it does a lot of impact to the victims. I'm doing this to share my own thoughts as well as to evaluate the different effects of each medium of bullying. In other words, this is just my opinion, and it's not meant to invalidate your or others' experiences. You may have your own ranking, and you're entitled to that. I have my ranking, and that's why I'm sharing it here today. That being said, coming in at number 5 is physical bullying. Nicole, how can you say that? Let me explain. First of all, physical bullying is the one with the least stigma. There's a lot of representation around it, like those typical American high school movies with kids having their heads shoved down the toilet and their backpacks thrown into basketball hoops. The media teaches us to develop sympathy for victims of physical bullying. The moment someone gets slapped across the face or whatever, every single one of us as a society can collectively agree that it's a bad thing. With this kind of bullying, it's extremely rare that someone tells a victim that they're overreacting, that it's all just in their head, etc. More people care about physical bullying. Speaking of caring, another reason why physical bullying is still impactful, but less so than other kinds of bullying, is because it's very easy to prove. It instantly draws attention from people around them who can then stand as witnesses. And even with no one around, it may be caught on security cameras. The victim may also manifest symptoms such as redness or bruises. Since there's a lot of evidence, it's easy to ask for help and to report it because everyone will believe the victim without question. And because it's easy to report, it's also easy for the bully to face consequences, which gives a sense of justice and relief to the victim and also discourages the bully from doing it again. Next, at number 4, we have verbal bullying. This comprises insults, yelling, cussing, cursing, anything that involves words that is done directly to the victim's face. It's a tier above physical bullying because of the reasons that I just mentioned. Physical bullying is well represented and hard to dismiss. Meanwhile, in verbal bullying, victims are often told to just ignore it, don't mind it, brush it off. And if they can't, they're seen as weak. Then it's also much more difficult to prove. How do you prove that someone is simply speaking an insult to you? You could take a voice recording and hide the device, but here in the Philippines, it's illegal under the anti-wiretapping law. Filming them with a camera is not feasible either because as soon as they see you holding a camera, they're obviously going to stop. It doesn't draw much attention if they're speaking softly, but even if it's loud, like they're literally screaming at you, not many people are going to vouch for you because, well, not many people care. Aside from its contrast to physical bullying, verbal bullying also has psychological components. It may include manipulation tactics such as gaslighting, guilt tripping, breadcrumbing, etc. This makes the situation worse because it's already hard enough that no one believes the victim. And in verbal bullying, the victim may not even believe themselves. It's common for victims to resort to self-blame, Stockholm syndrome, rationalization, etc. as coping mechanisms. The victim would then feel even worse, thinking that it's their fault. They might internalize those insults and question themselves like, maybe I am dumb. Maybe I am ugly. Maybe I deserve this pain. That leads to another point. Cuts, wounds, sprains, they heal. Words don't. They echo, they linger, they feed insecurities. The voice of your bully could haunt you when you're delivering a presentation or entering a competition or trying to sleep in the middle of the night. It never really goes away. But even though the words don't disappear from your head, at least the words get lost in the air. They're not permanent. But you know the kind of bullying where words are permanent? Cyberbullying. I put that at number 3. Cyberbullying hurts a bit more because there's digital footprint. It's not just lingering in your head, it's lingering on a vast digital space, which is the internet. Now, I know what you may be thinking. You may be wondering why I put cyberbullying a tier above verbal bullying when cyberbullying is a lot easier to prove. All we have to do is take a screenshot and done, reported. The bullies get jailed and all that is over. And I know that, which is why I had a hard time deciding which one should be ranked first. But then I decided to put cyberbullying higher because of 3 reasons. First is its vastness. The internet is a large place with a lot of features and thus has an incredibly broad scope of possible bullying tactics, some of which cannot even be done in real life. For instance, we have masquerading, which is pretending to be someone else. This can be done to impersonate the victim, thus making claims about the victim using their name to make them look bad. Or the bully can use this fake identity to gain the victim's trust and then use the victim's information against them. Can you do that in real life? Nope. That's one way that cyberbullying is unique from the rest. Another type of cyberbullying is outing, which is the sharing of the victim's information without consent. Think about screenshotting conversations and then sending it to others, sharing embarrassing photos and videos of the victim, like awkward dances, nudes, or whatever else, is also part of this. Let's not forget about harassment, doxing, flaming, trolling, spamming, extortion, sextortion, just to name a few. There's a lot that cyberbullying can comprise, and you never know what's going on behind the screen. You never know who can be trusted. Second is the permanence of it. Digital footprint is just there. It's done. It's not gonna go away. And even if it does, someone must have already taken a screenshot and posted it elsewhere. Once someone's conversations and media get leaked, it's still going to remain in some part of the internet, usually without the victim's knowledge. And that's scary. The thought of your data being handed out and your privacy being breached is scary, and what's worse is that you have no control over it. That leads me to my third point. It may be easy to report to the authorities once the victim has the proof, but the victim hardly ever does. People could be forming hate groups about the victim, people could be circulating lies about the victim, and the victim would have no idea. Unlike other forms of bullying that are always inherently done to your face, cyberbullying works behind the scenes. It's covert, it's unpretentious, it's silent. The victim may never even know. But there's another form of bullying that is also covert, unpretentious, and silent, but the victim always knows. The pain of it is that the victim is often the only one to know. Can you guess what it is? Rank 2 of this list is sexual bullying. Let me first define that though. I'm not including rape and sexual assault in my definition. Duh, if I did, then it would be obviously at rank 1 with no question. That's the worst thing that can happen to anyone. Here, I'm talking about repeated sexual harassment or gender-based harassment, like catcalling, flirting, offensive jokes, sexually explicit comments, suggestive questions, and overall just any form of unwanted or inappropriate sexual advances that do not involve any touching. It's going to be incredibly difficult for me to explain why this is among the worst ones because it's so self-explanatory, hello. but I have to. Going back to my point earlier, this kind of bullying is quite difficult to prove, especially if it's done in real life. How can a victim prove that some guy whistled at her and made a remark about her breasts? It's just difficult because, again, it's verbal. So you may be wondering, if it's practically just verbal bullying, then why did I have to mention a separate category? And why is the category higher in rank than the general verbal bullying? This kind of verbal bullying is so special that it deserves a category of its own. And here's why. First, it's rooted in misogyny. Just like rape and sexual assault, sexual harassment is normalized due to the patriarchy. For example, we have male entitlement, which is the idea that men are entitled to women's attention, affection, and bodies, which is perpetuated by the patriarchal idea that men have to be dominant over women, while women are simply objects meant to satisfy men's sexual needs. Thus, when sexual abuse happens, they say stuff like, it wasn't rape, it was passion. Another patriarchal idea that promotes sexual abuse is victim blaming. Instead of blaming the man, or whoever the perpetrator is, for outright violating the woman, people shift the blame on her for tempting him, such as with her clothing or flirty behavior or mixed signals. Therefore, because this kind of bullying is basically a battle between victims and the patriarchy, which has been fought since the beginning of time and still hasn't gone away, then there's a lot of stigma around it. Victims may be afraid to speak up due to seeing what happened when others did so. Or victims may speak up and then get dismissed because misogyny, again, is rooted deeply into our culture. And since sexual abuse is a very gender-based thing, as 80% of people who commit sexual violence are men, then it's difficult to find an authority figure who understands. Second is the psychological impact. Being a victim to sexual abuse is a very degrading experience. It makes the victim feel objectified, like they lost their agency, dignity, and personhood. It makes them feel like they have been reduced to a mere body with no feelings, no rights, no voice. It makes them feel like their boundaries don't matter because the abuser keeps persisting even after being told to stop. Victims of sexual abuse often develop anxiety, depression, and PTSD. And some of them, especially rape victims, even take their own lives. There's a deep pain in the thought that you are not a person in someone's eyes, but instead just a property, a commodity, a toy, a thing. So yes, sexual bullying is a very difficult one to top, but in my opinion, there's still a type of bullying that's slightly worse. It's social bullying. Why is this worse? Unlike sexual bullying, which requires only one person, social bullying is essentially the entire neighborhood, company, or school bullying you. And, there's strength in numbers. Everyone, or at least majority of people in a particular area, is against the victim, often for prejudicial and invalid reasons. Now, social bullying also has the degradation aspect that sexual bullying has. When the victim gets excluded from social groups, for example, their classmates all have a group chat together and the victim is the only one not added, then it can make the victim feel targeted, as though there's something wrong with them. They're outcast, ostracized, isolated. It makes them feel alone. It also makes them feel like they have no voice, similar to sexual bullying. When a large group of people is bullying you, it's hard to stand up for yourself or to even gather the courage to do so. It's extremely difficult to be bullied when no one is on your side. Social bullying also has the permanence of cyberbullying. When someone makes a lie about the victim in order to defame them, that lie spreads from one person to another until everyone knows about it. It would then be incredibly damaging to the victim's reputation. At least if it's mere insults, like in verbal bullying, most of what the bully says is true or based on truth. But when someone gossips behind your back, you may be bullied for something that's not even real. This creates a lot of undue humiliation for the victims and, again, damages their reputation. Some bullies even falsify evidence, like editing screenshots or doing Photoshop to add support to their story. And once that evidence is made, it can even make the victim subject to professional consequences, such as losing their job or scholarship. Once the lie is out there, it can't be erased. The damage will have been done. The victim will already look small in other people's minds. And that is something that is irreversible. Another thing that makes social bullying much more painful is that it's difficult to prove. In fact, the most difficult out of all the ones on this list. The victim themselves may be able to feel, using their intuition, that there's something sketchy going on, because bullies always accidentally out themselves, such as through sarcasm, backhanded compliments, disgusted facial expressions, or gossiping too loudly. But how will the victim be able to report that to authority? Plus, the victim can't even ask for help from their peers. Why? Because once a rumor is spread and everyone is convinced to gang up against the victim, then who will there be left to believe them? Who will there be left to be on the victim's side? Unlike with other forms of bullying, the victim still has a lot of options for who to run to. But in social bullying, pretty much no one stands with them anymore. That loneliness is daunting. Social bullying also has the vastness of cyberbullying. Social bullying may be a mix and match of all other items in this list, and when paired with the unique aspects of social bullying, it can be a greater issue and cause more pain. Furthermore, social bullying is the most stigmatized out of all the kinds of bullying on this list. Most people still don't understand that gossiping, spreading rumors, exclusion, public humiliation, etc. are bad things. They often put social bullying under the guise of chica, chismis, spilling tea, and fail to find empathy for the victim or realize the weight of their actions. Social bullying is the kind of bullying where you really have to actually experience it yourself in order to realize how painful it is. So, yeah, that's it for this video. I hope that we can strive to end bullying as a community. Bullying was, is, and always will be bad, and no matter what medium it's done in, it will never be okay.